All right, I have the honor of talking to Ms. Rolanda Byrd today and Mr. Mike Brown Sr. I'll start with Ms. Byrd. A year ago, on February 29th, her son, Akiel Denkins, was shot in the back by Raleigh police officers while he was running away from them on foot. This is still very fresh. The anniversary was just a couple days ago. I happened to go to Raleigh when it happened, and when I arrived, the Bragg neighborhood, was cordoned off by police tape for many blocks. It was very difficult to get a clear view of where Akiel had fallen, and there were hundreds of police, virtually no black officers in sight. Neighbors were outraged and, of course, saddened. And the witness testimony that I heard was that Akiel was running away from officers when one of them fell, and people laughed at that officer, and he was outraged, and he came up shooting. I don't know if that's actually true, but that's what people were saying at the time. And later that day, we were out there for many hours. Later that day, activists and local clergy and local politicians came down, mostly to quiet the area. The activists were there to turn up. The clergy and the politicians were there to turn people down. There was a real emphasis on not burning, not looting, and very little emphasis on actually dealing with the neighborhood's pain. Even before Akiel had been killed, the neighborhood was significantly underserved in terms of resources like grocery stores and jobs and things of that nature. To Ms. Byrd's right, we have Mike Brown Sr. You'll remember that August 9th, 2000, oh, my mind is going back, 2014, thank you. August 9th, 2014, Mike Brown Jr. was en route to his grandmother's house in Canfield, St. Louis, Missouri, or otherwise known as Ferguson. And Officer Darren Wilson approached him and Mike Brown Jr.'s friend in his car, pulled him over essentially for jaywalking, supposedly. And the altercation that ensued ended with Darren Wilson killing Mike Brown Jr. He was left in the streets for hours while friends and family and neighbors gathered around. They were angry. Of course, they were sad. Police brought out dogs. Inevitably, they brought out tanks and machine guns. And what was a very sad day ultimately turned into our generation's revolution and our generation's rebellion. From that point on, people in Ferguson, many who had never been activists before, stayed in the streets for over a year, camping out at Ferguson Police Department, participating in direct action training, so on and so forth, and our movement was born. So I offer that as context, but I think it's especially important that as we talk today, we really go behind the curtain of media and analysis to hear what it is like to lose a child in such a public way to something that has been happening to black people for 400 years. So, that said, whoever feels comfortable going first, I know this is a bit emotional, but can you talk about what it was like raising your children, the joys of raising them, but then also the challenges of raising them, especially once they left your door and you knew that they were potentially going to have police encounters? Either of you? Who feels the most ready? Okay.
Well, Mike was always a quiet kid growing up. he liked it, video games, sports, stuff like that coming up. He was a big guy as he grew. Um, he continued to start being a little on the quiet side until he got in his teenage years. Started being more openly talking. Like I said, he started becoming a big guy, so I had to really tell him that he had to be really careful because from behind he looked like a grown man. He was starting to look like a grown man, but as soon as you see him in his face, you could tell he was a child. You know, it said we had to have those talks about interacting with the police. I had those talks with my father before he had passed. By Mike just being a huge guy, I know I needed to have those talks with him. That wasn't the first time that he had interacted with the police before he had died. That's why we had to make sure we finally got an ID on him, because without that ID, they thought that he was lying. You know, so I used to tell them, you know, make sure you get a badge number, car number, anything like that, any type of identification. If you do not see the name of the officer tag on his shirt, because a lot of times in Missouri, they won't walk around with them on. Their name would be in their car. So you wouldn't even be able to identify them unless you get the car number, because they have to sign for that vehicle for that day. That's how you can find out who that person is. I think I went a little too far. What other question did you ask?
Well, I think that's good, and I think it's also important that people have context. Missouri, St. Louis County is divided up into 90 plus municipal counties. And some of those counties are as small as, you know, like a block by 2 blocks, and they may have less than 100 people. And those counties are dependent on traffic tickets like jaywalking, you know, busted taillights, things like that, for revenue. That's how those cities prop themselves up financially. And so there is a higher incidence, I would say, of racial profiling happening in Missouri, targeting of poor people, particularly black people, for things like jaywalking and real basic traffic incidents in order to generate revenue. And so what happened with Mike that day was something that happens in Missouri every day, except it went way, you know.
But the thing that upsets me, and I talk to my wife and his siblings about sometimes, you know, that this wasn't the first time that he interacted with Darren Wilson. This was the second time. He had brought it to my wife, and you know, he rubbed it off. You know, Daddy, don't worry about it. I ain't worried about him. He ain't talking about nothing. But as a father or a parent, I'm supposed to pursue that issue. You know, and it really bothers me. You know. I'm not beating myself up for it no more, but yes, I was really in a whole bunch of pain about that, because I eventually found out that this was the same person.
Right.
You know, so.
Right.
Yeah.
And in Ferguson, the police force at the time of Mike's death was less than 60 people. It's very easy to know each of the officers in the Ferguson Police Department. I became acquainted with them myself during the time that I was going back and forth. So it's also easy for police to develop an individualized antagonistic relationship with specific people. Ms. Byrd, would you share a little bit about Akiel?
Yeah, growing up, he was almost the same as Mike Jr. He enjoyed sports, video games, music, family. He played football for middle school. He didn't do any sports in high school, but during high school, he started developing problems with, I guess, peers. And at some point, we moved. Some people think that moves cause children to do different things and different outcomes to come out of why or being placed in a new community with new people to, I guess, interact with. But we moved to Florida, and at some point he was hard for me to handle, so I sent him back to North Carolina to be with his dad. He was 16 at that time, and from not being around his dad most of his life, his dad being in and out of jail his entire life, Akiel took to the streets, which then I moved back to North Carolina when he was, I think it was 18, 19. I was only there, 20. I was there for 4 years. When he was 20, I moved back to North Carolina. And at that time, he was in and out my house. He wasn't really living with me, but he wasn't really away from me. Like, we were always in the same city, like not far from each other. He tried to maintain on his own by living in like rooming houses and places like that he could afford. And in those specific homes or rooming houses, they were in areas of the city of Raleigh where it was low income, high crime. And that's the area that he dwelled in, per se. So just as you said about the officers in Ferguson, the officers that, the officers that roamed that area in their cars knew who my son was. He's called me on multiple occasions saying, "Mama, they over here harassing me. Mama, they over here harassing me 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning." And most of the time it'd be the same officer. And sometimes it's even a sergeant, and I would try my best to get their information, their name, car number. I would write all that down. I've called city officials, made complaints on harassment of my son from their officers. So the main charges that he started out with were trespassing charges. So even in the neighborhood you live in, you can be trespassed, which means if they catch you over there again, they'll arrest you. They have cause to arrest you because you've been trespassed from your own living space, like the area. You can't even walk to the store without getting harassed or trespassed. So those are his early interactions with police. He ended up being sought for a failure to appear to court. And this failure to appear was on a drug charge, which was related with being arrested in a car with a person that used drugs. That person being a white female, tried to say that she said that she bought the drugs from my son and gave them his phone number and all that, whatever happened with that case. Anyway, he ended up not going to court, but I know that he missed the court date, and I know that he went downtown to file a motion to get himself back in court. The motion was denied, which he didn't know about until the officer came and knocked on my door the Wednesday before he was killed and said that they have a warrant for his arrest because he didn't show up to court. And I'm not sure how it works everywhere else, but most of the time you get at least 3 motions to move your court date forward so you can be present. And at this time, I guess he had already had his last 2 motions, and they were accepted and planned for another court date. Well, this last motion that he filed, that he knew he filed, was denied, which he didn't know it had been denied because we didn't receive the letter until after he was killed that it was denied. But like I said, the officer had came to my house, and I let my son know that he had a warrant for his arrest. And at that time, he was also planning to go to his grandmother's house. She was the last phone call he made on his phone before he died. So But he was trying, he had spoken to a lawyer, and he was on his, well, not necessarily on his way, but he had spoken to a lawyer, and she had plans to take care of this failure to appear. But because this officer had his name on a list of 6 other individuals, and my son was at the top of that list, and he knew exactly who he was, knew he wasn't going to be hard to find because he was not hiding. And the street that he stood out on was like a place where him and all his friends was always hanging. It was right in front of a convenience store. So he went there first, and he saw my son, and he ran. And he chased him.
The officer chased him.
Oh, yeah, he chased him. There was at least 30 witnesses outside of the other agencies that came around that day. Civilian witnesses, there was 30 some, including the person that worked in the store. And my son ran. He ran around the block, around 2 houses that was right next to the store, and ended up behind one of those houses by himself and blocked in, and was killed. He was shot 4 times. One of the bullets went through his armpit, through his both lungs and his heart, and that was the one that killed him. So, and every witness that was out there said that he did not have a gun. Every last witness. And I just don't understand how you can have so many witnesses to say one thing, but they still lie on that one officer's story to assume or not place the blame on what they did, to hold them accountable for what they did in any way. There should have been some type of charge. It didn't have to be murder, but it should have been some type of charge brought against the officer, just because. And then it ends up, just like they say, with the same narrative as the rest of them, that a gun was somewhere in the vicinity, or the person pulled a gun in some way, which that didn't come out till like 3 days after my son was killed. But we sat home and we waited because we knew it was going to be said, even though everybody out there said that there wasn't a gun. It ended up being a gun.
Right, and the way that the gun magically materialized, there was no way for witnesses to see at the point where the police said that they were able to produce a gun because of the way that they had pushed everybody out and put the caution tape up. You would have had to have been in the houses that surrounded the area where he fell in order to be able to witness this gun that they said they found near the body, but not on the body, on his body rather.
And my son also laid out there for hours. He laid out for at least 5.5, maybe 6 hours behind his house before they moved his body. And they also stacked mattresses, used old mattresses, bed mattresses around his body so nobody could see him. Like, there was a fence that I tried to get through myself to be able to get back there to see anything, because the radius was so far back that they didn't want anybody to get close enough to see anything. Like, and these are body police officers that are doing this. Like, they shouldn't even be on the scene. You are the reason why my son is dead. You shouldn't even be in the vicinity of his body. Like, you shouldn't have been there. And to be that close, to be able to take mattresses and stack around him so no one else could see what you're doing, that should have been something that shouldn't have been done, first of all, and should have been looked at by upper levels. And myself personally, I saw 2 body police department officers walk from where my son laid with the blue and white cooler, the ones you put ice and drinks in, one on each side of it, walked across the street from where he was at to behind the building and went back to the same spot. And then 2 days later, they say they have a gun. I saw that. News cameras was out there when that happened. I saw that with my own eyes, standing behind the yellow tape.
I want to put some things into context. One of the things that um, Mike Brown Sr.'s wife and I have talked about, and Ms. Byrd and I have talked about, is the burden of proof for black parents when their kids are killed, be it by police or be it by gang members. When black children are killed in America, especially in places like Los Angeles, New York, and other places, there's a burden of proof for black parents to prove the innocence of their children to media and to police. I spent years living in LA and did some work with gang members and with parents who had lost kids to gang violence. And it is a different scenario, but it's a very similar scenario where your child is killed unexpectedly, and all of a sudden you have to prove that they were worthy of their lives that they've lost, right? And to put things into context, Mike Brown Jr. was 18 when he died.
Yes, ma'am.
If police had killed me when I was 18, I was on my way to college. I was also a skilled thief. And most of my friends growing up were stick-up kids, drug dealers, and bank robbers. And that's what the headline would have said. Wouldn't have probably said college-bound student. Akiel was 24 when he died. If I had been killed by police when I was 24, I was an active drug addict. I happened to be in grad school. I was very self-destructive. And that's likely what the headline would have said if I had been killed. I lived long enough to outgrow whatever my vices were and to heal from whatever it was in colonialism, in capitalism, that was generating that sort of pain in me. And often enough our kids don't get that opportunity because they're seen as negatives or detriments to society. But obviously we love our kids and do everything that we can to defend them. And in some places it just doesn't feel like we have enough power to defend them. The system is a monster, whether it's the school system or the policing system. And even when you talk about Darren Wilson having encountered your son before, having seen the structure of the Ferguson Police Department, it's like, what could you have done? It took thousands and thousands and thousands of people coming and standing in front of them day in and day out to even wear them down. So, it becomes a question of what can one person do? And I think the sad irony is that you have more power now that he's transitioned, and you have come to this place of unfortunate fame. You have more power to do something than you did before. Neither of you got an indictment. It was grueling being in Ferguson during the lead into the indictment. It was so stressful. Drones flying ahead, National Guard coming in, military tanks. So you could see the police ramping up for an armed conflict. The things they put out through media, the Klan made death threats to protesters. They left flyers different places, which tells you, what's at stake. If these are the types of things that are happening, we're stirring something that people don't want to be stirred. And then there's no indictment.
Right.
And the indictment wasn't to say that Darren Wilson was guilty. The indictment was just to say, we got some questions for you, right? But we didn't even get to the point of being able to ask him questions.
Right.
He sells his story for $1 million and disappears. Prior to Darren Wilson's name being released to us, the public, the police or somebody went out of their way to scrub his presence from the internet. Social media, for a while, if you Google Darren Wilson, you were only going to find articles. You weren't going to find any sort of trace of who he had been prior to shooting Mike Brown Jr. So the state goes to extraordinary means to protect their own. Right? You also did not get an indictment, and we were talking about this yesterday, that the district attorney called you before making the announcement and told you one thing, But then the way she presented it to the public made it sound, what she actually told you is that he had been shot in the back, which confirmed eyewitness testimony. But what she said to the public was that he had been shot in the chest. And then you said when you talked to the medical examiner that they confirmed that she could say he was shot in the chest and it could still mean the back, but the public was going to think it was the, right, exactly. So the public would assume that he is facing, his killer and is, standing off with him, so on and so forth. What we talk about justice. What is justice? I mean, the indictment would have potentially led to some sort of prison sentence, maybe. Maybe, but it wouldn't bring your children back. What does justice look like now for you?
It's just accountability for me.
Accountability?
Accountability. I can't walk around shooting police officers and don't think nothing's gonna happen to me. So, when children are enjoying their life and just walking down the street minding their own business, let them be. Just let them be. They kids. They doing what kids do, walking down the street or outside minding their business. And for them to be attacked and approached like that, I think it's just cowardly. They're a bunch of cowards, So, with that being said, it's just that's the problem now. That's why the community where I'm from, they don't trust the police. They willing to go to war with the police. Those were a few of the things that I could have said could have sparked a whole different movement. But to embarrass my son like they embarrassed him for 4.5 hours in 98-degree weather like that, I couldn't pull the trigger like that. So, the activists and the protesters, everyone had their own agenda. You had some out there for the respect for the family. You had some out there for their own agenda. Like I tell people, it's a whole lot of people that has been affected by the system. We have people that's out here walking around that has been little men and seen their mother get raped or fondled by a police officer. There's other people that has been lost family members from police officers. So you had a whole group of different people that came into town or was just from St. Louis that was just ready for something like this to happen, to prove their point. And like I told them, that basically took all the focus off of what we really was looking at, when the burning and everything was going on. Look what Mike Brown Jr. done to this community. This how the topics was, the headlines was. It wasn't no more of a officer killed young black man, So I had to tell them like, hey, you're taking the focus off my boy, That's y'all do y'all, but we're not a part of it, because this is all they want. This is the way of sweeping it up under the carpet for them, So
That's one of the things that I said early on. Like, that's what they expected us to do here in Raleigh also, and just because of who my son was and how well he was known over the whole city of Raleigh in that community. I was able to say, no, we're not doing that. This is not what we're here for. They killed my son. We want justice, but we're not going to tell where we have to live and be every day just because we're angry. The anger is going to continue to be there after you burn whatever you burn. You're still going to be angry. So the chief of police in the city of Raleigh took acknowledgement for not rioting, not burning, not looting. She took acknowledgement for that, but it was actually me saying, no, we're not going to do that. She got a raise. She got people, the police department got raises, but you know what I'm saying? Here, the people in the community still, we suffering. We still remembering. They made me take down 2 memorials for my son where the community put up for us to be up in the morning and enjoy remembering him. The city, the police officers and whomever else in the city harassed the people that let us put these memorials up until they made us break them down. And the last one just was taken down. My son's birthday was February the 8th. By February the 10th, that last memorial was taken down. So they're not even allowing us to grieve or mourn or celebrate the life and the memories that we do have for Akiel Denkins, which is so wrong. They took him from me and we still can't remember him the way we want to remember him.
It's a very touchy conversation. You know, I can understand exactly what she's saying. No, I'm still pissed. You know, I'm just gonna be real with you. You know, I just turned my pain and made it a purpose. You know, but that's how I fight and I do this positive thing through my pain. You know, I just transferred it to a positive, you know, but yeah, we this ain't no tough. This is a tough pill to swallow, right here, you know. And if you haven't been through it, you will never understand this, you know. So,
you know, that last panel that was just up here, the young lady that sat on that end, she made a comment about how they go to city council meetings and they don't want to be hounded by the people. They come in there and talk crap about them, and at the end of the day, it's whatever she said, that comment she made, and it's the same way with how you killing our children. We don't want to continue to have to cry and bury our child and mourn and you not let us mourn. You're not gonna allow us to do that because you don't want nothing that reminds the city of what happened to Akiel Denkins or Michael Brown to show up for nobody to see. Don't want no kind of pictures of them around your neighborhood because you don't want to be looked at as someone that did something wrong. You did something wrong. You should show and give us a reason to be to trust you guys again. You want trust in the community, but you don't want to give accountability to these officers. That's not fair to us for you to ask us to accept one thing and you want to accept one thing. Right. We've been trying in Raleigh to get a community oversight board for the last year, and every time we step foot in front of the city council, they act like they don't know what we're talking about. But we see it in Charlotte. We see it other places. And the young man, Sam, I thank you for what you said. Everything you said on this last panel, thank you. Everything was great that came out your mouth. And that's what we need here in Raleigh, Durham. There was a shooting not too long ago here in Durham. 6 months after my son died, another young man in Raleigh died, like for the same freaking reason. Why do we have to keep going through this? You want us to show you something, but you need to show us something too besides firing somebody. These officers that killing our sons need to be disciplined. They need to be indicted. They need to be punished and go to jail and serve time just like we would have to if we did any of this. And I'm still mad. I try to do the right thing and go out and make a positive out of this also. I've joined a couple of organizations. Like I said, I've been to city council 4 times this past year. And they televise it and all this, that, and the third, but the next day is nothing. Nobody says anything. And yes, we need all the black men to come out. We need all the young black people to come out. We need the white people to show up and be heard. And just like he said, if you see something wrong, make sure you report it, just like what happened to that young man, Mr. McDonald, because they knew the officer wasn't going to tell the truth. But I'm so glad they recorded it and they was able to present that to the police department or the Department of Justice, whoever. If you're in a place, in that type of place, that's what you should do. White, black, brown, green, whatever color you are. If you know something is being told wrong, tell the truth. That's all we ask. Like, nobody else is going to listen to us. But if there's somebody else out there that has proof that this was told wrong, tell the truth. That's the only way that one of the ways that we can make sure that our story is being told, because my son can't tell his story. His son can't tell his story. And nobody knows what happened behind that house but my son and that officer.
Because it's a lot of ways that you can stand up and just be anonymous about it if you're afraid. Because there's a lot of people with our case that came up missing.
Yeah.
A lot of people. I don't know where they at.
Yeah.
We haven't heard from them, haven't seen. It's like they disappeared off the face of the earth.
Well, we know at least two people that were on the front lines
Mhm.
were found in cars,
Yeah. From
shot,
before it's dead.
burned to death.
Yeah.
There was one person the day after the grand jury announcement, and then last year there was, say his name for me.
Darren Seals.
Yeah, Darren Seals.
Good friend. He was on the front line since the beginning of the death of Mike Brown Jr. He was found shot in the head in the backseat of his car, and they ignited his truck and blew it up.
Yeah.
So he ended up having a funeral with nothing. You know, he was very outspoken.
Mm-hmm.
He'd tell the police where to go with it.
Yeah.
He'd tell Trump where to go with it. You know, last time he was pulled over, the police officer told him he needed to choose his battles wisely. And that was the last time we heard about him. His truck was just blew up. And we knew that it wasn't no regular like gasoline. This is something that somebody in some type of field knows something different about, because you know, with gas it's gonna burn. But this actually blew up, you know. So I don't know.
And I don't know that we get to it today in this forum. I don't know that we talk about the connection between policing and white supremacist organizations like the Klan and the neo-Nazis. But part of what came about towards the time of the grand jury announcement, and now Anonymous had done some work to connect photographs of Ferguson Police Departments to photographs of people attending Klan meetings in the state of Missouri. And I personally have had conversations here with a Durham police, what was he, a watchman, a black watchman. And I remember asking him, what do you do with your officers who are white supremacists, the ones who were in the Klan? And he said, well, as long as they do their job, it's not a problem. So it's not really even an issue of race once you start dealing with police, as much as it is what they call the code of blue. That once you, and I'm not saying everybody, there are plenty of people who join the ranks of the police and realize that morally they're just not cut out for it. And that the police, as they imagine it, is not what it actually is. But yeah, that's what that officer told me with a straight face. He really meant that.
Well, you know, I blame a lot of those officers too, you know, that actually know who the dirty ones are and don't stand up. So you just as guilty as them, you know.
To that point, I was in a documentary, Black and Blue, with my son's story, and there was an officer on the panel from Durham. No, he was from Cary. And basically he told everybody in that audience that those officers that are dirty work together, and the officers that are clean work together. So they're not even going to be in the same place at the same time. They know they dirty, and they're going to let them work together. But we're going to work over here, and we're going to mind our business. We ain't going to worry about what y'all got going on. So that was said, like, in the panel, of just like this, in front of an audience. Like, they know what's going on, and they're not going to do anything different because they don't want to mess up anybody's vibe. They don't want to let it come out and cause an uproar in the city or the U.S. because they know what's going on. They know exactly what they're doing. Just like they said earlier, they know what this system is doing, and the system is doing what it was set up to do. That's what they said. That has to be changed, because just like when he said that, they know that it's wrong. Him saying that today lets us know that they know that it's wrong.
Well, I want to be sure that we speak to the work that you're doing right now. Mike Brown Sr., you have chosen for change. Do you want to say a little bit about your organization? You also have a table back here.
Yes. Well, after Mike was killed, we got to moving real fast. I had to be on this show, that show, this show. I'm just thinking about justice. Whatever I got to do is put the truth out. I'm going. So we was rolling. So around November, it was October, I had heard about a lot of those families in Canfield because they have been affected with those tanks. So a lot of people had lost their jobs, and there was a lot of people that if they had left at a certain time, they couldn't even get into the complex because they had to shut down. The complex had a curfew.
Let me say, the complex had a curfew, and I don't know if you heard what he said, but there were literally like military tanks in the streets blocking off roads so that you couldn't get in and out, and it kept people from being able to travel to and from work in a timely fashion.
Mm-hmm. So by hearing about the things that that the community had went through, we decided to do a give back. And with that give back, I had met a young man. He was about 14 years old. He had drew a picture of Mike, and he had on there "Chosen for Change." I looked at him. I told him thank you. And when I looked at, the logo again, I said, "That's it. He was chosen." So we worked on that, building that brand. So we ended up getting the foundation paperwork going, and then we ended up getting our 50C3. So I've been going around speaking to different colleges. We've been doing give backs, feeding the homeless. I have a young group of girls. It's called SIPs. It's called Sisters in Purpose. They go out and they do the work. They're from 12 to 18, and they out here in the communities, helping out. I have a program called Chosen Fathers. It's like 12 of us. It's from Andrew Joseph, Uncle Bobby, Oscar Grant's uncle, Jordan Davis, Father Ryan Davis. It's a gang of us, So we do a lot of taking time with the guys to heal. I try not to. I try to say it in a certain way because the women need to heal too, but the women are always being reached out to. The men just supposed to be this tough guy, and you're supposed to take it. And we hurt, we have pain too. So I built that part on with the foundation to help us heal, with each other. That's about it though. Yes, and I have some more information on the back table with the programs and things that we have going on. I have some shirts back there for sale if you'd like to purchase. But yeah, that's changing pain into purpose right there.
And you've swept up. You've included a lot of the people who were on the ground in Ferguson as a part of what you do, like Mama Cat, who is the movement chef. She cooks for all the protesters and such, and a lot of the folks who were in the streets camped out outside Ferguson PD. Miss Byrd, I remember you telling me that you were a part of PAC. That's Police Accountability. What's
Community Task Force.
Police Accountability Community Task Force. And what does that work look like?
Like I just stated, we've been just trying to find our place in the community and trying to gather enough people, the right people, and making sure that the community knows that they could, come in and have a place to express their anger and join us in doing different events in the neighborhoods, for the neighborhoods. We've been to the city council meetings. We've been to 4 last year, one so far this year. Trying to get at least a recommendation for the Community Oversight Board, which the guy talked about on the last panel. And I was trying to get that question in on how, when the mayor and the city council members are just acting like they don't know what you're talking about, like playing dumb. And for the whole year of last year, we asked this question: can you at least just give us this recommendation to get our Community Oversight Board? And you can see it's been done in other places like Charlotte and other places around the U.S. Because this young man spoke about it today. So, this is something that we need outside of policing and police departments trying to police everything and have these people set up to make sure that they're not doing something that they shouldn't be doing. And the other young man on this end of the table spoke on how having one of those oversight boards could like just make sure the community is being involved with the decision making for the community. Like, how can you want the community to interact with you, but you give them no space to do that for themselves? Like, first of all, we have to come together as a community, and policing is an outside service. Let us police ourselves. Like, let us call you to where we need you to be. Don't just come in and think you're supposed to, we're gonna go by your rules. This is our neighborhood. We live here. Let us form our organization. You guys have your organizations in the north side neighborhoods. Y'all have y'all community watch. Let us form what we need here first before you think you're supposed to come in here and tell us how to do it. Okay, and then also I've been working with hopefully getting this body cam policy changed. Like, we need better policy with this body cam bill that they just passed last year. So, and we only have a short time to get all of this prepared because the session's about to close somewhere this month, like near the end of the month, in the middle of the month. So we got people working with us, the ACLU, on how to get this community oversight board and at least try to take something and build it for ourselves and make sure that our children aren't just, the DA is not the only one that can say, well, nope, he's not going to get indicted. We don't see reason, so you can go back to work and put him on a different side of the city and say he's fine to come back to work. Just, it's
Like he can't drive across town.
I mean, it's just.
Do you, and we have just a minute or so left. Is there a specific ask that you have of local people here with regard to the organizing work you're doing in Raleigh? Is there something that people can do to show up for you and to show up for these changes that you'd like to see happen?
Yes, I would like to specifically ask our city council person in my district, Corey Branch, to help us or give us or at least suggest to the Mayor McFarland, that we need this community oversight board. That's going to be my specific ask to him. And as far as neighborhoods and communities and civilian people, just make sure that, like we talked about earlier, if you're in a place where you can be a witness and pull out that phone and record something that you know might not end up being the truth on the other end, and reporting it to the right people. The police might not be the right people all the time, but the ACLU have a website or a mobile app that you can upload videos anonymously to. So you won't even have to worry about that. Just find that ACLU mobile app. If you find something and you record it, just send it to them. You only have to answer to it. That's proof enough, for something that might happen to your friend, your daughter, your son, your grandchild. Because that's what I'm worried about. I got a son, another baby boy, and 3 grandchildren, boys, that I have to worry about from here on out. So whatever I'm doing for them. And hopefully we can come together, support the different events that we have going on. This weekend we're having an event Saturday at the Vital Link. It's off Rock Quarry Road in Raleigh, where we bring the community together for the arts. We're doing some dancing, some singing and rapping and all that for the community. Well, they're going to be doing it for us, so we're not doing it. But so we've invited, and it's from 11 to 4, and it's for the public. It's for anyone who wants to come. And also a little segment on the remembrance of my son, Akiel Denkins, because February 29th won't be here again until 3 more years. So we celebrated Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday this week.
I'm sorry for the way we met, and I'm tremendously moved by your courage, and I keep each of you in my heart and in my prayers. I have been in the streets for each of your children. I will continue to protest and organize, as will many of the other people here. Let's give them a round of applause, please. Thank you.